one and all. High fly ball into right field. She is gone. He struck him out. 2 balls and a strike to count on Taylor. Reyes fires, swinging a drive, deep left field. This is way back. Walk him off. Chris Taylor.
What's up, everybody? Welcome into DodgerHeads, presented by DodgerBlue.com. My name is Jeff Spiegel, joined tonight by Daniel Starkand. Daniel, home opener, Dodgers win. A little stressful there at the end, but it got to be feeling pretty good after tonight's win.
Yeah, much like me and you coming back from Vegas early this morning, the Dodgers offense took a little nap in the middle of the game there. But hey, when you still look up at the scoreboard, they ended up with 9 runs, 14 hits, 3 walks. Everyone in the lineup, I think, except Hunter Alberto, got on base at least once. So, what a performance. What a game overall. Like, so many big moments. Obviously, none bigger than Freddie Freeman getting that ovation at second base. That gave me chills. That was really cool. Not everything was great. Obviously, like I said, from the first to the 8th inning, the offense shut down there. But hey, they got the dub. The fans are going home happy, and that's the way you want to start it off at home.
Yeah, bottom of the first, you've got Walker Buehler on the mound. He's pitching pretty well, and you get 5 straight singles with 1 out. The Dodgers jump to a 3-0 lead. They've got runners on first and third. You're thinking, all right, offense was rolling in Minnesota. We talked about that. 7 runs apiece in those 2 games, and you're just thinking to yourself, well, now the Dodgers offense will settle in, put up a big number. Walker Buehler settles in. And then all of a sudden, like you said, the offense disappears. The Dodgers stay at a 3-0 lead after Chris Taylor hits into a double play. Walker Buehler gives up a 2-run home run on the last pitch he throws. David Price comes in, gives up a solo home run in his next inning. And all of a sudden, we're entering the bottom of the 8th, and the game is tied 3-3. So we'll get into in just a bit tonight how everything shook out, how the offense went from good to terrible to incredibly good back at the end there. We'll talk about Walker Buehler. We'll talk about the decision to let David Price pitch. We'll talk Cody Bellinger, who seems to be having a bit of a resurgence here. So a plenty to talk about. But let's start with kind of a recap of how we got to where we are. As I said, Dodgers, Mookie Betts gets out to lead off the game, but the Dodgers respond with 5 consecutive singles. Nothing hit especially hard. It didn't seem like some bloopers, some infield singles, but they jump out to a 3-0 lead, and then Chris Taylor hits a new double play. Again, at the time, you're thinking, strand a guy at third, never want to do that, but you're thinking, look, the way this offense is rolling, things would be good. Cody Bellinger leads off the next inning with the single. From that point forward, the 2nd inning through the 6th, after Bellinger's single, the Dodgers go 1 for 15, 1 being the only runner to reach base during that stretch. And then Walker Buehler, who had looked pretty good throughout, he gets to 2 strikes with 2 outs in the top of the 6th. He's at 97 pitches. He throws the 98th, and Aristides Aquino takes him deep, absolutely crushes a high fastball. That pitch was just 93.5 miles an hour, almost more than a full mile an hour under his average, and all of a sudden, it's a 3-2 ball game. Dodgers go to David Price in to close out the 6th, bring him back in the 7th. Brandon Drury, who was in the game because Jonathan India had gotten injured, he takes a 2-out home run off of David Price to dead center. All of a sudden, it's a 3-3 game. Again, give us some time. We're going to get to the David Price thing. I've got some thoughts on that. The Dodgers come back in the 7th. They get a Taylor single, a Bellinger walk with 1 out in the 7th inning, but they can't do anything. Gavin Lux stares at a fastball down the middle, striking out. Mookie Betts swings at a 3-2 pitch in the dirt. A couple of terrible strikeouts. And you and I are sitting here, as you said, 2 guys that had to leave our hotel in Vegas this morning around 6 a.m., and we're thinking, oh my goodness, the first 7 p.m. game of the year, and we're headed to extra innings. But thankfully, the 8th inning, Freddie Freeman leadoff double, Trea Turner RBI single, a Muncy, a terrible strikeout, but then we get Will Smith, 3-run home run. That was kind of the dagger that put this one out of reach. Taylor singles, Bellinger singles, a wild pitch scores a run, Gavin Lux walks, Mookie singles, and all of a sudden 9-3 is how this one finishes out. We'll get to Buehler, we'll get to all that, but just big picture, what do you make of a performance like this? Kind of nice to see the Dodgers succeed, struggle, and then put things away at the end.
Yeah, I mean, I think big picture is that, this offense, like, you might be able to shut them down for a few innings, but that doesn't mean they're not just, like, they could easily just come out and put up a 5 spot at any time. And, when you're going through the recap there as far as, like, who contributed, you mentioned pretty much every guy that was in the lineup. Like, as we've talked about so many times, there's no breaks in this lineup. It could be the bottom of the order getting it done. Could obviously be the big dogs at the top. So, I know they didn't look great all night. That whatever his name was, Sam Martin, I think he actually pitched pretty well for Cincinnati. mixing speeds pretty well, had guys off balanced. But hey, you gotta shut these guys down for 9 innings, not 6.
Yeah, I mean, you look through the Dodger lineup, you hinted at it. Everybody but Hanser Alberto and Gavin Lux, who played in this game, ends up with a hit. So basically, your top 8 spots in the order all with hits. But that doesn't even tell the story. Mookie Betts, 2 hits. Freddie Freeman, 2 hits. Trea Turner, 2 hits. Will Smith, 2 hits. Chris Taylor, 2 hits. Cody Bellinger, 2 hits. So you got 6 guys with a multi-hit game. Justin Turner and Max Muncy right in the middle there with 1 hit. Justin Turner did reach twice. So basically 7 of the first 8 batters that the Dodgers had reached base at least 2 times. Cody Bellinger leading the team with 3 reaching base 3 times. Gavin Lux also reached base on a walk as well. Let's look at the pitching side in Walker Buehler. I know you're a big Walker Buehler fan, obviously. All Dodger fans are. But what did you make of Buehler's performance? 5 2/3, 5 hits, 2 earned runs, 3 walks, 4 strikeouts. We talked about him on opening day. Matt and I said, hey, serviceable was the word Matt used. Fine was the word I used. Felt like a guy who was thrown at about 85, 90%, just sort of easing himself into the season, and that was good enough. I thought he looked better, actually, tonight until that last pitch to Aquino. What did you see out of Buehler?
Yeah, I definitely thought this outing was a step forward for him. He's on record. He said, many times how he doesn't like spring training. His spring training numbers will reflect that. I don't know what it is. I mean, he's a big game pitcher, so I guess he just doesn't really get up for the practice games. But we're still at a point in the season where guys are getting built up. You mentioned that, on that pitch to Aquino, like his fastball was at 93, so the velocity was clearly decreasing there. His pitch count got into the 90s, which is a good thing when you're in the building up process. But I think it was clear that he kind of ran out of gas at the end there. I didn't mind them leaving him in for Aquino just because he had looked so bad in his previous 2 at-bats. I'd say I probably would have changed the pitch call there. Like Aquino was whiffing at those sliders all night, and then Buehler goes with a fastball there, and that was probably the only pitch he would have hit. So outside of that, I thought it was pretty good. I think he had like 7 whiffs in his first outing against the Rockies. Yeah. He was up like 13 or 14 tonight, so that's a good sign. I think he only had like 4 strikeouts, a few walks. So, still, working up to what he's going to be. But I thought it was a step in the right direction for him. Yeah,
13 whiffs for Buehler tonight. You mentioned that more than almost double what he had in his first appearance. 98 pitches was the total. I'm with you. I mean, like there was no reason. We could look back and say should have taken him out. But I think Joe Davis even said on the broadcast, it's kind of like this is a guy who was sitting on the fastball, and that's just what he got. And to be perfectly clear, it was a good swing. It wasn't as hard as Walker probably wishes he'd thrown that pitch. He probably wishes he got it up a couple inches, but it's not like he left that pitch right over the middle of the plate. It was top of the zone, maybe even a little higher. It's just a big guy that was looking for a fastball that was able to turn on it there. So safe to say then, Daniel, you're sort of encouraged with the 2 performances you've seen from Buehler thus far?
Yeah, I mean, we're still in the first couple weeks of the season here. Like, we're not expecting him to be in peak, mid-season October form yet. Yeah. Like I mentioned, he's not exactly a spring training guy, so these are kind of still his tune-up games. And hey, the Dodgers have won both of his starts, even though he's kind of labored a little bit, so that's a good sign.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Buehler comes out of the game. His last pitch, again, that 2-run home run to center field from Aquino. They go to David Price there. Now, at this point, it's a 3-2 Dodgers lead. Walker Buehler gets through 5 2/3, so at that point, David Price comes in. I'm fine with it. David Price has been pretty good overall this spring, whatnot. You realize you've got 3 1/3 innings. You figure, okay, if a guy gets 1 out here, then you've got 3 innings left. You don't have to leave Price in for 3 batters. You can just do whatever. Well, Price comes in. He gets the 3rd out. He goes into the next inning. He gets the 1st out. He gets a 2nd out. And Price is still in the game. The Dodgers now just 7 outs away. And sure enough, David Price serves up a home run. All of a sudden, the game is tied. Some folks online saying, what is Dave Roberts doing? I went back and looked. Reminder, the Dodgers have 16 pitchers on their roster right now. They also are coming off of a series in which Clayton Kershaw gave them 7 innings yesterday in the morning, so they haven't had to use anybody. So I went and looked and said, all right, you're 7 outs away. We know the Dodgers have a deep bullpen, especially guys that I would consider high leverage, Vesia, Hudson, Gratterall, Trine, and Kimbrel. So you've got 5 guys I would consider high leverage, and yet Price is in the game. I went back and looked. Alex Vesia pitched Wednesday, so he was probably the only of the bunch that was truly unavailable. And even then, he could probably pitch back-to-back days, but it's early in the season, so maybe not. Hudson and Gratterall pitched Tuesday, off day Monday. Gratterall pitched Sunday, Treinen pitched Saturday. Gratterall, Treinen, Hudson, and Kimbrel all pitched on opening day. So basically what I'm saying here is Kimbrel and Treinen had not pitched since Saturday and Friday, respectively. Gratterall's the only guy who had pitched twice since Friday. Treinen pitched once, Gratterall pitched Sunday and Tuesday, Hudson pitched just Tuesday, Vesia pitched just Wednesday. What in the world is David Price doing in that situation in a one-run game?
Yeah, I'm with you. Like, I didn't mind going to him in the spot that they did. Like, there was 2 outs, no one on in the inning. It's the bottom of the order coming up. Mike Moustakas has really struggled against lefties. He gets that out. Then I didn't mind bringing him back out just because you got the 8-9 hitters coming. The 9 hitters, another lefty. And to me, after he gets that second out of that inning, when the top of the order is coming out, I know it wasn't Jonathan India. He came out with an injury, but Brandon Drury's kind of a guy who like is a bench player, but he's like, if there's a lefty in there, that's probably when he's going to get his starts as a righty hitter. So I think to me that was the time to make the change. And I know obviously hindsight is always 20/20, but I was saying that like before the batter happened. I was like, all right, Dave, you going to get him? I wasn't exactly sure who was warming up, if anyone, but I would have gotten him, a batter sooner. At the end of the day, like, it's not the end of the world to allow, you're up a run and no one's on base. Like, worst case scenario is he gives up a home run like he did and the game's still tied. Like, it's not like he gave up a 3-run jack and now all of a sudden you're trailing or anything. But I probably would have went and got it and put a righty in for Drury there.
Yeah, and I think if you're defending the Dave Roberts decision, it's exactly like you said. Price had gone 1, 2, 3, the first 3 guys he faces. And yes, it's the top of the order, but it's actually a guy who didn't start the game. So, it's really basically the 10th best hitter that the Reds had available to them. It happens to be Drury. Price makes a mistake, and he absolutely crushes it to dead center. All of a sudden, the game is tied. And that brings us back to the offense, and this was the fascinating piece for me. If you look at how the Dodgers offense performed, the question you have to ask is, what inning was it? The first inning, through the first batter of the second inning, the Dodgers were 6 for 8. That was Cody Bellinger leads off the second with a single. At that point, they're 6 for 8 at the plate. Chris Taylor had grounded into a double play, so they'd only made 2 outs from as far as individuals. From that point forward, the next batter, through the end of the 6th inning, the Dodgers were 1 for 15. 1 for 15. They come back in the 7th inning, through the 1 out in the 8th inning. The Dodgers then go 7 for 10. So they score 3 runs in the first 4 outs. They score, 6 runs in a 4-out period between the 7th and the top of the 8th, or the bottom of the 8th, and then all of a sudden the game's a wrap. So, is this just fluky, the Dodger offense sort of being a roller coaster of unbelievable, dry spell, unbelievable? Like, is this random, or is this something to be worried about?
I'd say it's just random, like kind of like law of averages. Like, if you look at the totality of it, it was a great night for the offense, but obviously, like you just mentioned, it came in bunches. But hey, that's just the nature of baseball. That's how it happens sometimes. To me, what I've been most impressed with as far as this Dodger offense goes is they haven't really been relying on the home run ball. Like, yes, Will Smith hits that home run to kind of ice it there, but other than that, and like the 3 home runs in a row the other day, and like 1 Austin Barnes home run before that, and then I think Muncy had one as well. Like, other than that, they've been hitting singles, they've been passing the baton to the next guy, and that's kind of the signs of a good offense, if you ask me. Like, I think some of the changes we've seen to this Dodgers roster, like, they've kind of brought in guys who consistently make contact more, and I think in the long run that's going to wear down pitchers. The old adage is, if you put the ball in play, good things will happen. Obviously, that's not always the case, but, more times than not, going up there with the approach of, wanting to put the ball in play, going up the middle, going the other way, good things are going to happen, and that's what we saw in the first inning and then again in the 8th inning. Yeah,
12 of the 14 Dodger hits were singles. Freddie Freeman's double, Will Smith's home run, the only 2 exceptions. And, we'll talk about the Will Smith home run in a bit, but off the wall, off the glove, and then over, so almost not a home run. But
pinball.
Yeah, exactly, which, hey, we'll take it. Will Smith. I predicted a Will Smith home run at some point in this game. I was just 1 inning off, so apologies to Will. But let's see. Brian on... George on YouTube is saying Belly's looked much better, much more confident these past few games. He looks like he has some of his swagger back. You look at the numbers, and it's a fascinating look because he has now reached in 11 of his last 18 at-bats. And the last 5 balls he has put in play have all been basically qualified as hard hit. One of the first one's 94.7, so we'll round up and say they're all over 95. Those are his last 5. over the last 2 games. Now, you could look at some of the other numbers and be a little more pessimistic. I had my brother sent me some numbers earlier today that were talking about the expected numbers that Bellinger had coming in. He had an expected batting average of 0.98, but an actual average of 222. He had an expected slugging of 124, but an actual slugging of 444. That was coming into the game. So saying that maybe he had gotten some fortunate, maybe his batting average on balls in play was a little higher than it should have been. And yet, for me, the 5 hard hit balls he has had in his last 5 put in play, that to me is a sign. I'm not really paying attention where the ball is hit. Yes, is he hitting, liners that seem to be squeaking through the hole between first base and second base at an unusually high rate? Yes. But if those balls are being hit at 97, 98, 102 miles an hour, then I'm good. Are you optimistic about Bellinger after what you've seen the last 2 days?
Yeah, I mean, I'm definitely optimistic. I'm not, willing to say he's all the way back yet to his MVP form or whatever, but it's definitely optimistic. I think his approach has been a lot better. Like, I think a lot of the times when Bellinger has struggled, it feels like right when he gets in the box, he's down like 0-2, like within a couple seconds.
Yeah.
And he's chasing pitches out of the zone and whatnot. And he did have 1 strikeout tonight that was pretty bad. He chased a pitch that was way away. But I think for the most part, he's been getting himself into favorable counts. He hasn't been chasing pitches as much. Like if you stay within the strike zone, I think that leads to, more hard hit balls.
Yeah.
So I think it's a positive sign. I think, mentally, obviously seeing a couple hits next to your name is always a good thing when it's, someone like him who had the season he had last year and the spring he had this year. So, positive signs, steps in the right direction. I'm not willing to say he's all the way back yet, though.
Yeah, we have a large sample size that suggests that maybe he's been struggling of late. And so, I'm with you. I don't think 2 good games is going to swing this. But the thing I will say about Bellinger is that he seems very much like a confidence guy. He seems like the type of player that once he sees the ball squeak through holes, all of a sudden some of that form, some of that awkwardness, some of that moving around and the tweaking, maybe that just settles down. He quiets his mind, he quiets his body, and he just goes out there and hits, which it's sort of like Corey Seager. Seager, it's like, he just was a grip it and rip it kind of guy, it felt like. And Bellinger, when he's at his best, it feels the same. It feels like there's a level of confidence that he has, and that's what we've got. So let's go to Freddie Freeman. You kind of hinted at this. One other guy let's jump to the Will Smith home run. We'll come back to the Freddie Freeman. At that point, I mean, the Dodgers have 2 runners on. It's a 1-run game. Big hit from Will Smith, off the top of the wall, off the glove. But for a guy who's been hitting the ball hard and not getting any luck, pretty fortunate there, but you like to see it for Will Smith.
Yeah, and I thought it was hilarious. Like it right as Joe Davis is reading out, Will Smith's, clutch stats late in games. He launches one for a 3-run homer to put the game on ice. So as we've seen throughout his entire career, like there's no one you want more at the plate in those type of situations late in games. He's proven time and time again, like even though he's still young, he comes up clutch in those situations. So I think we've been saying for a while that Will Smith is the best catcher in baseball, and I think this is the year that kind of becomes a mainstream take.
Yeah, absolutely. Apologies, some folks mentioning that some of our sound is a little bit off tonight. I'm not quite sure about that, so apologies if that's on my end. We'll get looking at that after this. But the Will Smith home run cracked me up. I posted on Twitter. I mean, Joe Davis was literally just talking about how from the 7th inning on with runners in scoring position, he's got an OPS over 1,200, and then sure enough, he takes a fastball about 1.5 inches from his face. I mean, that's the part about baseball players, Daniel, I'll never understand. How you get right back in the batter's box after seeing 95, literally 1.5 inches from your face, and then 3 pitches later, he's launching a ball into left center field. Yes, a little bit of fortunate bouncing there, but I mean, that ball's at least a double, basically, no matter what. And so it's
it's a sac fly at the very, very worst.
Exactly.
At that point, every run was big at that point.
Exactly. Okay, the one other guy I wanted to talk about, you hinted at it, Freddie Freeman. First time in Dodger Stadium in a Dodgers uniform, first at bat, first pitch, just classic Freddie Freeman. Gets a good pitch to hit, lines it right up the middle, nobody even close to it, finds a hole in the shift and puts it there. And then he starts the rally in the 8th inning, gets a double, smashed into left center field, standing out on second base. They're chanting his name as the pitching change is coming on. I love that he took off his helmet, sort of showed his appreciation to the fans. But, I mean, this is pretty much all you could have hoped for in a Freddie Freeman debut as far as when it comes to Dodger Stadium. He finishes 2 for 5, 2 runs scored with a double and 1 strikeout. I mean, he's hitting over 300. The on-base percentage is almost 380. The slugging, not quite there yet. We haven't seen a ton of extra base hits from him. But just a cool moment for him with the single, a cool moment for the double, and then the Freddie chance. And again, you look at the lineup, and it's Freddie Freeman double, Trea Turner single, and it's kind of like, yeah, this is what we signed up for.
Yeah, and what an awesome moment that was for him and his family. They kept showing his family in their suite. Like, they're obviously all from Southern California, so now they're going to get to watch him on a nightly basis. And for him to get that receptions, huge props to Dodger fans. That was great. And I just want to point out something that I've kind of been really impressed with Freddie, and that, unless you watch him every day, which we didn't when he was on the Braves, you don't really see. I've been really impressed with his base running. Like,
yeah.
It feels like on all these, like, he's been getting good reads on all these, like, loop singles. He's been going first to third, scoring from second on a single, scoring from first on a ball in the gap. I wouldn't say he's the fastest guy out there, but for a guy his size, he can move a little bit, and he seems to make some really good reads. So that's something that I didn't really know about him that's been pretty impressive so far.
Yeah, I was laughing on that play in the first when he went first to third, and it was a great read by him, and he's huffing and puffing around between second and third, and I just thought to myself, I think we're going to have another Adrian Gonzalez, Albert Pujols type in about 5 years, maybe the last year of this contract with Freddie Freeman. Like, it might not be the quickest guy in the world rounding the bases, but cool for him. And then you and I were going back and forth on Twitter. He comes back up for a second time in that eighth inning, and there's guys on, and the crowd is lively. It's a sellout crowd, and it's just like, I just thinking to myself, if Freddie Freeman connects on a ball here, it's going to be like the Manny Ramirez bobblehead night type of scene. And as you pointed out, he goes up swinging at everything.
Yeah, I don't think we're going to see him take too many at-bats that poor this season.
No.
I think he recognized the moment he saw the game was pretty much out of reach, so he could just go up there and take some hats and try to hit a home run. And honestly, I respect him for that. Like, that's at that point in the game, like, home run or bust is totally fine with me.
Yeah. Looking big picture at this game, and I know, we've got folks that are just joining us. So again, thanks to those joining us on YouTube, joining us on Facebook. Dodgers win 9-3. Home opener in Dodger Stadium, sellout crowd. Again, they jump out to an early lead in the first inning. It looks like it's going to be a comfortable one. Then the bats go quiet. Walker Buehler, David Price make two mistakes, and those two balls leave the field. Then the Dodger offense comes back in the seventh, can't get a run across, even though they put a couple guys on, but come back in the eighth and absolutely blow things open with 6 runs in that inning. But this, to me, like, if I'm just thinking big picture, Daniel, I'm thinking about the Dodgers offense. This, like, we've talked about people that are worried about the Dodgers pitching, and are they going to have a guy in the 4th and 5th spot in the rotation that they feel good about? This, to me, is why I feel so confident in this team, because just the depth of the offense. Joe Davis at one point said to Oral, he's like, yeah, you kind of got to pick your poison. And Oral looks at him and goes, it's a venomous lineup. Like, what do you mean pick your poison? Is it Freddie Freeman, or is it Trea Turner? Is it Justin Turner? Is it Max Muncy? Is it Will Smith? I mean, it's just, you go all the way down the line. And look, if Cody Bellinger's hitting the way that he's hitting now, there's literally not going to be a weak spot 1 through 9. But the Dodgers now, after struggling in Colorado, have put 7 runs, and 9 runs on the board. I mean, if this is a team that, and again, I wouldn't even look at tonight's game and say that it was like an anomaly as far as an offensive performance. 2 extra base hits, obviously 14 hits is a lot of hits, but if you take 4 of those away and add a couple home runs in there, this game's probably even more lopsided than it was. And so, to me, I know it's early. I'm not overreacting to the last 3 games, but this feels like a blueprint of how the Dodgers are going to play out this season, which is we're just going to outscore teams. And guess what? When Walker Buehler's on the mound, it's not going to be close. And when Kershaw's on the mound, it's not going to be close. And when Urias is on the mound, it's probably not going to be close. And you know what? If Heaney, if Anderson, if Gonsolin, if those guys give up 4 or 5 runs, that's fine, because we're going to try scoring 7 and 9 every single time.
Yeah, and I also think, like, as, like, the weather kind of warms up, as the summer comes around, I know weather is not exactly an issue in LA, but
yeah,
in cold Minnesota and cold Colorado. But I think, we'll see more home runs from this team, as the weather warms up, and that's when they become really dangerous. Like, right now, they're beating teams with singles. Once they start leaving the ballpark, then that's kind of like the final infinity stone, I feel like. And Cody Bellinger, I think, is the main component of that. Like you said, like, if he's hitting anywhere close to what he's capable of doing,
Yeah.
batting, 7th or 8th or whatever, then there truly is no holes in that lineup.
Absolutely. Absolutely. All right. Well, looking big picture, and folks that are joining us, of course, you can chime in on this point. Let's talk player of the game, standout performer of the night, if you will. Again, the Dodgers win 9-3. There's some candidates here. Will Smith with the big hit. Freddie Freeman, of course, home opener. Walker Buehler, I thought overall pretty good. So, Daniel, I'll let you get first crack at this one. Cody Bellinger, another guy we mentioned that could be in there. But a player of the game, you got anybody that jumps to mind for you?
Yeah, I mean, it's honestly hard just because, it was everyone contributing. I'll go with Cody Bellinger just because I feel like it means the most for him, having a good night where he gets on base 3 times.
Yeah.
But there's plenty of candidates, but I'll go with Belly.
Yeah, we got Derek's got Will Smith, THP, Bellinger or Will. Jess has got Bellinger. Stoned Zebra says Willie for sure. I love this. It's like one person says Bellinger, the next person's like, obviously it's Will Smith.
Yeah.
I think those are the two obvious well, I mean, and I think Freddie Freeman.
Where there are obvious candidates, yesterday, Clayton Kershaw was the obvious candidate. I feel like tonight's game, there was definitely not an obvious candidate just because everyone contributed.
Yeah, and I think Freddie Freeman deserves some credit. I think my answer would be Will Smith. He had the biggest hit of the game, the 3-run home run that absolutely put this, because at that point, it's a 1-run game. So, yes, there was 1 out and there were runners on 2nd and 3rd, but Muncy had just struck out. It was like, if that's a sac fly and you go into the 9th and Craig Kimbrell comes in and it's 5-3, it's a dramatically different experience, potentially. It's not an anti-Kimbrell take, but the Will Smith home run, I think, is big. Freddie would probably be second for me just because first game at Dodger Stadium, first pitch single, the big double that starts the rally in the 8th inning, because that can't go overlooked. He was the one that got things kicked off, and obviously, again, even a leadoff double is very different than a leadoff single. A leadoff double, you're thinking we have to score. Leadoff single, your expectations are a little tempered. A couple one. I mean, I got to give Dodger Stadium some love. 60th anniversary of the stadium itself, and the fans, just sellout crowd. Not a shock to any of us as Dodger fans, but the Freddie Freeman chant to me was a huge moment, amazing moment from the fans chanting Freddie, Freddie, and then he's again taking off, sort of taking a curtain call there on second base. I love that. And I got one more I'll throw at you. Clayton Kershaw, the in-game interview, 10 out of 10 from Clayton Kershaw in the in-game interview. So that's those are my 2 honorable mentions for player of the game, the fans and Clayton Kershaw in his in-game interview.
Yeah, I think Joe Davis was onto something there when he said Clayton has a future in broadcasting, because I thought he was great. I thought it was cool how he recognized that, Walker threw the cutter inside Otto and he crushed it the previous at bat, so he said he's going to go away, and that's exactly what he did, and he gets the out. I thought that was really cool. Also, I thought the pregame ceremonies were great. I always love that on opening day. Jaime Herrin and his final season out there throwing the first pitch. We got some ex-Dodgers that are, favorites of ours, Adrian Beltre, Eric Gagne, Nomar, they got everyone out there, so I thought that was really cool. And obviously great energy, in the stadium all night.
Yeah, it was a bummer for me watching through MLB TV. You kind of missed the pregame ceremonies. There were just glimpses, and then they'd cut to commercial. But yeah, man, seeing Adrian Beltre and Eric Gagne together. Gagne's my guy. Beltre, again, one of my favorites. And somebody kind of made the point. This might be the first time that Beltre's sort of been back as in any official capacity. Which is just cool to see, because obviously that's a guy that it felt like there might have been some bad blood between him and the organization with how things had ended, and so to see him back there on a day like today was awesome. Jaime Herrin, you mentioned. I tweeted it out. This guy he is on par with Vin Scully, and that's a massive statement for me to say, and yet he's been there. Joe and Oral were talking during the broadcast. I wonder how many people have been here for every opening day of the 60 at Dodger Stadium. And it's like, well, that guy has. He's been actually calling games for 60 years. So unbelievable stuff. The Dodgers fortunate to have there. Let's see some other folks in the chat. Lucky's got Freddie Freeman as the chat. Ryan W. also giving Clayton Kershaw's interview a shout out. Richard Taylor on Facebook says Bellinger. He's back. Robert Perez says Bellinger just because of the struggles that he's gone through. Ryan's got Will Smith, Robert Perez, Bellinger, moral victory. Wow, Hophead 86. Bellinger will end up batting cleanup. How about that? You want to talk about some optimism from the Cody Bellinger fans? There's one for you. Andrew McDaniels, Walker Buehler keeping the game close. Again, I think Walker Buehler pitched well. 5 2/3, 2 earned runs is sort of below his standards for himself. He's disappointed, obviously. You saw him chucking his glove in the dugout, but Buehler, pretty good stuff there as well. Folks asking, I don't have Spectrum. Unfortunately not. Don't live in Los Angeles, so the local broadcast, I do get I do get that feed through MLB TV, and the nice thing about living in Portland is it's never blocked out, but I just can't watch pregame stuff, unfortunately, there. Okay. Well, anything else here, Daniel, before we move on to sort of the next couple of games coming up, maybe some questions from folks. If you've got questions, throw those in the chat. But anything else from tonight's game that sort of jumps out at you as warranting a discussion?
I mean, maybe just a quick shout out to the bullpen because we haven't really talked about them. But I mean, outside of that, the home run Price gives up, they were lights out. Treinen does his thing. Who even closed it out? I don't know. Evan Phillips closed it out. I think this bullpen is going to be a big strength for this team all year, and I think we saw that tonight. Even though Price gives up the home run, so be it. Like we'll take, however, like 3 1/3, one run from the bullpen. Like you'll take that. Yeah,
absolutely. Let's see. Some questions that we'll get to, and then we can look ahead. Justin says, "Why do you believe Muncy is struggling for form?" Obviously, Muncy, sort of from a batting average perspective, I believe has the worst numbers on the Dodgers roster. But the thing that's worth pointing out, let me just look up what his numbers are. He's hitting 143. Does have a 333 on base percentage, which is better than Trea Turner and Justin Turner both. But the thing about Muncy is he did hit a home run yesterday, and he also had a second ball that was, an unbelievable catch up against the wall. So, that hit
a ball like 500 feet foul today.
That's true. So I mean, are you seeing anything with Muncy? Does it feel just like bad luck to you, or does it feel like, I mean, he's coming off of injury?
Yeah, I think we're just a week into the season. I don't think there's any reason to be concerned. Like you said, like he's still drawing his walks. He's got an OBP of 333, which when your batting average starts with a 1, that's decent at least. So I think with him, like he's always been a high walk guy. So as long as he's taking his walks, that's a good sign. I think the extra base hits and the homers will come only a weekend here.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, the on-base percentage with a guy like Muncy, I think, is the key. Now, look, him, Mookie, and Gavin all had atrocious strikeouts at various points, either watching fastballs down the middle, swinging at balls in the dirt, or some combination of the two. So, rare to see that. I mean, especially even Gavin Lux, he doesn't belong in the same sentence necessarily as Mookie and Muncy, but one of his calling cards is his eye and his bat control and that kind of a thing. And so, woof, those were some those were guys that were guessing, which just felt, I don't know. Yeah. We're not used to that. Yeah. Let's see. Ryan W. says, what do you guys think about David Price in the future? Anybody who's been watching the show knows my take. I thought David Price might not make it to the opening day roster. I think he's been good. As you were mentioning, Evan Phillips was a guy who came in, and we talked in one of our shows that we recorded yesterday about how somebody asked us, hey, Dodger bullpen, how is this going to play out? They've obviously got 16 relievers. They've got to cut that number down to 13. And they've got guys like Ferguson, Canley, and Bickford who are due back at some point. So that's potentially 6 of the guys currently in the bullpen who would be either designated for assignment or sent down to the minor leagues. I had a funny theory in my head as we were talking about Evan Phillips. Are the Dodgers just running Price and Phillips out there now because they know they're guys that aren't going to be on the roster in a couple of weeks, and they say, hey, let's get them inning on their arms and save the Vestias and the Gratterols and the Hudsons of the world for later in the season? I mean, that's like sort of a far-reaching theory there. But what do you make of kind of how the bullpen has shaken out so far, and David Price in particular?
Well, I also think it's kind of like they're kind of being auditioned to see like how they do, and because they're gonna have to cut the roster down at the end of April, so some relievers are gonna be out the door, so they want to get as many looks at those guys as they can to see who are the best options. But honestly, I think overall Price has looked pretty good.
Yeah,
he gave up the home run tonight, but he's still he got 4 outs. Like he got everyone out other than the home run. He looked pretty good in his first outing, so I think he's fine. I just don't think you necessarily need him in that high leverage of a situation. Like I think he's fine as a low leverage type of guy, kind of like Evan Phillips comes in and closes it out once the game's out of reach. I think like that's kind of a role for David Price as well.
Yeah, and obviously his paycheck is what's going to keep him on the roster, you would imagine, unless they can get a team that might be interested in some of that. Let's see. There was a question in here. Derek asked, do you think Lux will get the majority of starts at second this year despite all the offseason talk about Muncy playing at second base long term? I will say this. Muncy had a great diving play early in the game today that saved a run, kept Joey Votto at third, couldn't make the play to get the guy out at first. But Muncy looked good at second base today. But what do you think? Is Gavin Lux going to see the majority of innings at second base for the Dodgers, you think?
I'll say yes, because I think like the two guys who are going to see the most time at DH are Muncy, which if Muncy's DHing, then Lux is at second, or Justin Turner. and when JT's DHing, then Muncy would shift over to third, and Lux is still at second. So I definitely think he'll get a majority of the time there. I know he didn't start today, but Dave Roberts basically just said it was a day off, and he plans to start him the rest of the homestand. So I think as long as Gavin Lux continues to hit the way he has been, he'll be penciled in that lineup.
Yeah, and I mean, I imagine they would rather trot him out there at second base than Max Muncy if they just had to choose. Not because Gavin Lux is unbelievable and Muncy's terrible, but just from an injury perspective, you'd rather have Muncy not diving for balls like that if you can help it. And I mean, Gavin Lux does have some versatility, as does Muncy. Muncy, I believe, already has a start at third base as well. We know he can play first base. Gavin Lux probably can play some left field, maybe even center field in a pinch as well. And so,
I mean, if Trea Turner
and shortstop too.
Slide over to short as well.
Yeah. Okay, Jose Rodriguez, I've got to give him a shout out in the comments here. Breaking news: Will Smith slaps Reds in the face tonight. That's a pretty good headline right there. I'm disappointed in myself. I didn't think of it.
A lot this season.
Yeah, there's plenty of Will Smith jokes to go around. Jose got the first one there and nailed it. So good stuff there. Okay, a couple more questions. Let's see. This one was a fun one. Jason, I believe, was it Jason? Somebody in here asked. Oh, here we go. Yeah, Jason, any advice for me? I'm attending my first Dodger series in San Diego versus the Padres next weekend. Some folks in the chat saying San Diego people not necessarily super friendly to Dodger fans. Daniel, I assume you've been down to San Diego to see a Dodger game before?
I've been down there a lot of times, and I absolutely love that stadium. I think the atmosphere there is great. I don't think you necessarily have to worry about the Padres fans too much, just because in my experience, like, there's usually just as many, if not more, Dodger fans there than Padres fans. Usually when I go, I don't know if you're going from LA or where you're coming from, I just take the train. I think that's a lot easier than driving and paying for parking and such. The metro takes you right down there. You get off like a block away from the stadium, and you just walk right over. I've had great experiences doing that. Yeah, I mean, I don't think you have to worry about Padre fans too much, to be honest.
Yeah, the only time I've ever been down to San Diego, the Padres were not competitive, so it was a far less. This is a long time ago, so there wasn't any rivalry. I think it's a little more intense now, but yeah, as you pointed out, it sure seems like Dodger fans will be taking up at least a third of the seats there. Lucky asked a question, Julio's speed, are you guys worried about that? Of course, if you're not tracking, Julio's velocity was way down in his first appearance. He's on the mound tomorrow. I'll say...
Tomorrow, he's the day after.
Excuse me, you're right. He's got one more start. Excuse me. He's pitching against the Reds is what I meant to say. But, yeah. I mean, I've got to see it more than one time before I start to get worried about velocity. Are you in the same boat?
Yeah, I'm in the same boat. Like, his first start was also at Coors Field. Like, he's a guy who, relies heavily on his off-speed stuff, which doesn't always play out at Coors Field. So I get the velocity concerns because that was a thing in the spring as well. So we'll see. Like, he's still getting himself worked up. I think a lot of people are saying they're blaming it on his weight loss. Like, he said he lost 20 pounds or whatever, so they think he might not have as much power there. We'll see as the season goes on. I'm not going to be concerned over one outing. So I personally, I think he's going to bounce back and have a really good outing at home against the Reds.
Yeah, let's talk about this. We'll sort of close out the show tonight by looking ahead. Obviously, the Dodgers, they've got 6 more games on this sort of stretch of homestand before they get an off day and then travel to San Diego next weekend. They've got 3 more against the Reds, and then, of course, the Braves come to town. Freddie Freeman's old team, Kenley Jansen, so that should be fun. But looking ahead to this Red series, we've got Tony Gonsolin on the mound tomorrow versus Vladimir Gutierrez, Urias versus Green on Saturday, and then Heaney versus Maile on Sunday. Looking at Gutierrez, 4.15 ERA so far this season, a whip of 1.85, so you like to see that. 26-year-old right-hander from Cuba. He, 22 appearances last year, 4.74, so not much there. Hunter Green, 22-year-old prospect, 5.4 ERA thus far this season. I believe that was his major league debut, yeah. And then you've got Maile in the final game of the season. He was good, 11 strikeouts, ERA of 1 thus far. So he has had 2 appearances, but he's been good so far. So Dodgers, all the rest of the way here, again, Gonsolin, Urias, and Heaney on the mound. How do you feel like the next 3 games play out for the Dodgers?
I mean, this is a Reds team that's, if we're being honest, like, they're not very good. So I would expect the Dodgers to be heavily favored in all 3 of those games. Tomorrow, Gonsolin is starting. As we saw in his first start, it'll probably be a piggyback situation with Tyler Anderson coming in after him. So hopefully they could kind of save the bullpen a little bit there. But I'm looking forward to that third game. I think that's a great pitching matchup.
Yeah.
Buehler, we just talked about, obviously, and then Hunter Green, the local kid. He went to Notre Dame, which is right near where I grew up. He's out there throwing it. He's kind of their Bobby Miller. He's out there, sitting 100 consistently. So that'll honestly be a nice little test for the Dodgers offense. I'm looking forward to that game.
Yeah, and Maley, I mean, just looking at his numbers, he's a guy that maybe doesn't necessarily crack your radar too often, but 2021, 33 appearances, 33 starts, a 3.75 ERA, a 3.59 ERA before that. And as I said, he's made 2 starts thus far this season. He has allowed 1 run in 9 innings with 11 strikeouts. So a couple tests for the Dodgers towards the end. Tomorrow should be the advantage. But Gonsolin will be interesting. As I said, I'm pro Gonsolin, and I think I wear those rose-colored glasses sometimes when I watch him, but I thought his stuff looked good. The question will be, for a guy that somehow manages to get ahead in the count 0-2 so often and give up seemingly more 2-strike hits than just about anybody I can remember, I'm curious to see how he shakes out. Obviously, we saw the Reds lineup today. Jonathan India comes out with a pulled hamstring. He's probably the second best guy they've got in the lineup behind Votto. And so if India can't go tomorrow and maybe misses a couple of days, not only would that be bad for my fantasy team, which is dominating yours right now this week, but also would just make this lineup for the Reds a pretty, I don't know, I don't want to say easy, but not necessarily too formidable if you're a Dodger pitcher. And especially for a guy like Gonsolin, Urias might be exactly what they need to sort of get themselves on track.
Definitely. And I also... I think he made a good point about Gonsolin not really being able to put away guys. I think that'll be something to kind of keep an eye on throughout the whole season. He doesn't seem to have that put away pitch, but that's okay. Like, I think, in the situation they're in right now where everyone's kind of healthy right now and you have, Tyler Anderson as a piggyback guy, like if you only get like 3 or 4 innings out of Gonsolin, that's totally fine. Like, that's manageable. I think run prevention is the key there. And even though throughout Gonsolin's entire career, even though he hasn't always looked great, the one thing he has done is prevent runs. Like, his career ERA begins with a 2, which that's elite right there, even though he hasn't necessarily looked at like it. So, I don't think going deep into games is necessarily important with him. But yeah, we'll see how he does. This is kind of like I mentioned with some of the other guys that were auditioning for like full-time bullpen spots. He's kind of still auditioning for a full-time rotation spot.
Yeah, we mentioned he might be a guy that could be a surprise send down to the minors once they have to make some pitching changes, because Tyler Anderson's not going to be that guy. If he continues to look good, they're paying him major league starter money, and so it very well could be Gonsolin going down and the Dodgers going with Anderson as the number 5 starter. So there we go. Well, that'll do it. Let me close you out on this one, Daniel. I ask this question every time we've gone live. I'm 0 for 2. Matt and I both predicted a sweep after the Dodgers won opening day against the Rockies. They, of course, lost the next 2. Then Matt and I did a show right before the series against the Twins. I predicted the Dodgers to go 1-1 to split. Matt got that one right. He predicted a 2-0. So I'm 0 for 2 on this, but they got 3 more against the Reds. I'm going to go 2 wins, 1 loss for the Dodgers, so they finish out 3 out of 4 from the Reds. What do you have? How shaking this one out? I won't make you predict which game is the loss if you predict a loss, but what do you have happening in the next 3 games?
Well, I am going to do exactly that because I had the thought on my mind. I'm with you. I think they take 3 out of 4. I think sweeping 4 games is hard. So I think the Dodgers will take the first 3. I think, if there's any pitching matchup that's in the Reds' favor, it's that last game. Andrew Heaney, I know he had a good first start, but kind of like Bellinger, I don't think we're fully bought into Andrew Heaney because of one good start. Tyler Mahle, like you mentioned, he's actually a pretty good pitcher. So I think the Dodgers take the first 3, lose the series finale, which, hey, as long as you're winning series, like as long as those series wins just keep racking up, before you know it, you'll be, that record will be looking really good.
Yeah, hey, we got to chase down the Rockies, man, who can't lose baseball games. It sure seems like. So there we go. Well, hey, we appreciate everybody joining us in the chat. Again, I see some people, by the way, asking about Trevor Bauer. Daniel and I recorded a video yesterday from the Blue Wire Podcast Studios in Las Vegas that got posted today, breaking down the latest in the Trevor Bauer situation. If you didn't get that update, that his stay on the commissioner exempt list. I keep wanting to say suspension. It's not a suspension, but his stay on that list has been extended till next Friday at least. And so we'll see what ends up playing out. But if you want more details about that, Daniel and I's thoughts, check that out. That's over on the Dodger Blue 1958 YouTube, probably where most of you are watching. If you are there, please subscribe, ring the notification bell. The plan for the season is this. Every Monday, we're going to be doing a full-length show. That'll be about an hour, and that'll be breaking down both what we just saw over the weekend as well as looking ahead to the week, looking at trends and sort of stock up, stock down, those types of things. So that'll be every Monday. That'll post around 10 a.m. in the morning on YouTube, and the hope is to have a podcast out as well. If you're a podcast person, check out Apple Podcasts or Google Podcasts or Spotify, wherever, DodgerHeads. Please subscribe, rate, and review. That's super helpful to us. So that's the plan. And then as far as a live show, the plan is for Daniel and I, or Matt and I, to do one live show per week. The goal is going to be for Thursdays most of the time, but if there isn't a Thursday game, then we'll shift it probably to a Friday game. So stay tuned for details on that. We'll obviously keep you posted, but we're going to try and do a long-form show and a live show. Both of those will go on the podcast feed, and then we'll also have some short shows throughout the week, just breaking down breaking news and reacting to smaller stories as they come up. So, of course, for all the latest, check out DodgerBlue.com. Dodger Blue 1958 on social media. As I said, Dodger Blue 1958 on YouTube, and Dodger Heads wherever you find your podcasts as well. So we appreciate you joining us. Dodgers win 9-3. The offense explodes in the 8th inning to beat the Reds. The Dodgers win their 3rd straight. They have 3 more against the Reds tomorrow, with Tony Gonsolin taking the mound for the Dodgers. That's Daniel. I'm Jeff. We'll see you next time.